What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I am your host, Mundungus Creevy, joined as always by my co-host Cameron Parker, Gage Madrid, and our babysitter's back, Glenn Hauser. How's it going?
Grand return.
Grand return. How's everything going?
Like someone used to say, we can't miss you if you won't go away. So I had to go.
Fair. That's fair. All right. So we have a bunch of stuff to update everybody on because we have technically free agency hasn't started yet, but legal tampering has, and we've been tampering all over the place. So we're going to give you some updates on that, but I want to start you guys off with kind of a fun question. And it's going to be a who is the worst GM edition. Okay. So I've got 4 options. You need to tell me who's the worst. 1, Giants general manager Joe Shane. Like, you paid Darius Slayton more than you're willing to pay Saquon Barkley. Stupid. Browns general manager Andrew Berry. Do I even need to expunge on that one, or is that one?
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Okay. Third one, Cowboys general manager and owner Jerry Jones. And the last option is Mavericks general manager Nico Harrison.
I mean, if you're putting Nico Harrison in there, then he's got to be the one, right?
You know, I was going to say, I really thought I would never see the day where, you know, a deal across all sports would be trumping, the Deshaun Watson deal, which, you know, obviously that general manager is in here. You got to go with Nico Harrison. I mean, like he completely ousted an entire fan base, you know, and I think what's nuts is, like, you know, for the Broncos side, like when everybody talks about Russell Wilson, there was no mention of like the ousting of fan bases, you know, with Russell Wilson and everything. So like this Nico Harrison thing, it is completely just like almost ousted an entire Mavericks fan base. So much so that like the Mavericks fans or the Luka Doncic fans are all focused on, you know, Doncic on the Lakers right now.
I'm actually going to go with Joe Shane, quite honestly. The reason being is Andrew Berry could be seen as a puppet for Jimmy Haslam.
Mm-hmm.
Nico definitely is a puppet for the Adelson ownership. Jerry Jones is his own. he's the owner as well. But the owner of the Giants did not want to happen what happened last year, and the GM still went along with it. How he retained his job after that, especially after it was on TV, living forever on that video, shocking that he is still in the driver's seat there. And I mean, you made a great point, Mike, with that. Slayton got offered more money than Saquon Barkley, the face of the franchise. Absolutely crazy.
And then he runs for 2,000 yards.
Probably should have won MVP. Yeah, just.
I actually have a dark horse candidate for worst GM in the league right now. Mickey Loomis of the Saints.
Yeah.
I mean, what they are doing right now is so irresponsible. This is the year where they could have finally torn it down and started their rebuild. But what do? They sign more aging, expensive players in Justin Reed, and they give an extension to Juwan Johnson. And they continue, and Tyrann Mathieu as well, yes.
Yeah.
And they just continue to kick the can down the road. It's so dumb. Sean Payton saw the writing on the wall with this, and he yeeted out of there, man. It's embarrassing.
Yeeted out of there. I like that.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing here is, like, there's no wrong answer on something like this because it's pretty subjective. Like, if you feel one way or another, like for Joe Shine or, you know, Barry or Nico Harris or whatever, like, there's no wrong answer on that, you know? Yeah. And I just think the thing that's so interesting for me, there's I'll just look at Barry, for example. Obviously, you know, you touched on it, Glenn, and being a puppet for, Jimmy Haslam. I find that particular angle with the whole Miles Garrett situation fascinating, because it's like there's a lot of ways to, certainly look at that Garrett angle. Like, one, Garrett wants to set up a meeting with you. He wants to set up a meeting with, Haslam, probably get an idea of like the direction of where things are going, in your organization. Haslam basically said, no, we won't have a meeting. And then, Garrett signs the extension, and there's a couple takeaways from it. It's just like, for one, I love the loyalty. Browns or not, I love the loyalty of a player who stays with a franchise for one, for one team. I mean, you look at Joe Thomas as an example. I mean, like he did it with Cleveland, but two, if you're Miles Garrett, you want also what's best for the organization, and what was best for the organization is that probably you were to be traded, because that trade alone would have significantly helped your franchise to possibly like 2 first-round picks, and definitely furthered along your development of your franchise even more. It's just, and then you go forward now to, because they gave such a long contract to Garrett, what does that mean for the other members of their team? Like, what does that mean for David Njoku? What does that mean for some of the players that you need to pay? There's just so many takeaways, from the, there's so many different takeaways, with the, that Garrett angle. That's just a ways that it could go. So I don't know, I'm happy that Garrett got his money, but it's one where it's just like, should you really have gotten that money somewhere else?
Do we want to praise his loyalty, though? I mean, it seemed like a money grab. I think it's same reason Deshaun Watson didn't want to go to Cleveland. All of a sudden, the Brinks truck backed up. Cleveland it is. I think that Miles, I think that $40 million a year solved quite a bit of problems. Just shows that he's really not interested in winning a championship, though.
Yeah, and Cam, I listened to like some of what you were saying, because I was trying to text stuff in the chat. But it, to me, like, I don't know, Gage, if you want to look. To me, it just seemed like, I understand wanting to hold on to Miles Garrett, right? But you already put yourself in the hole with the Deshaun Watson trade. So if you end up trading Miles Garrett, you could get some of that draft capital back and rebuild the team instead of paying Miles Garrett all that money. It just seems like poor roster management to me.
Oh yeah, but I just, there's just a lot of ways to look at that, and I know just a lot of takeaways with the whole Garrett thing.
I will be back in 15 minutes.
Yeah, he's making
that did happen.
Just go. Just leave.
I'm
Second
out.
fiddle, just go.
I will see you guys in a few minutes. I will be back, and I will give my thoughts on Sherfield here too.
Jeez. All right, so let's get all the free agency stuff done before he gets back. No, I'm just kidding. I did end up making a list of interesting signings, as well as like former Broncos that aren't with the Broncos anymore, things like that. So we'll just kind of go through the list and kind of give our thoughts on the things that are happening in free agency. So first one, I got the Dolphins. Zach Wilson signed a 1-year deal to go to the Miami Dolphins. So the sexy trio is not together anymore. We need Sam Hartman.
I will say though, and I it's unfortunately, I don't know why I didn't look at this angle, because I thought that the 49ers were a pretty good landing spot for him, but I should have gone further and realized that, with the San Francisco ties, if you will, and specifically Tua's health, it would make a ton of sense for him to go to Miami. And so I had the Rams on, in terms of looking at everything, and then you even look at it from the standpoint of, just the Rams, like with their situation of Matthew Stafford, and then the 49ers and maybe Kyle Shanahan being a bit arrogant enough to go and find another quarterback like that Sam Darnold that he did. So I'm definitely happy for him. He's going to a warm climate down there in Miami. So I'm definitely happy for him, but obviously, the Broncos had other priorities of another backup to keep.
Oh yeah. And then next is they're not former Broncos players, but one of them was a linebacker we were interested in signing. And that's the Jets. They got Justin Fields, I'm assuming is going to be their starting quarterback. And then Jamie Sherwood, who is one of those linebackers that we were kind of interested in free agency and bringing into the Broncos. Baltimore Ravens get DeAndre Hopkins. That just happened recently, so good for him. Samaje Perine goes back to the Bengals, signs a 2-year deal. And then BJ Hill, that was the defensive tackle that I was interested in. He's going back to the Cincinnati Bengals. Got 3 years, $33 million. I think the big news from, was it 2 days ago? Yesterday? The Steelers traded for DK Metcalf. I don't know who's gonna throw you the ball, but have fun.
Rodgers to Metcalf, is that? I mean,
dude, you have to think, right? Like Rodgers to the Steelers. It makes sense, right?
Well, they're not gonna want Russ. I mean, if they give the guy a $150 million contract as a wide receiver, that just is bananas. And for him, pairing him up with George Pickens, who already pisses and moans, I mean, this is going to be a disaster in the wide receiver room, at least with Pickens. It wouldn't surprise me if they Deontay Johnsoned him somewhere before the season started as well.
I mean, it's already going to be a bloodbath anyway, because they're going to be fighting over, who wears number 14. There's only so many 14ers that can go around. So it's going to be interesting. When I think that
he's got more money though, so
I will say I think that when you look at the quarterback room, it's very Bronco related. The fact that the two quarterbacks that they may as well end up with is Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. As far as if you're probably thinking what they should do is actually they should keep Russell Wilson. Specifically with the idea that, he finished the season for him. He did have a pretty okay season with the Steelers. Obviously didn't end the greatest, but you bring Metcalf in there, a guy he clearly values and Metcalf clearly values. So you already have that relationship there. And you also have a guy in Aaron Rodgers who is kind of like his own timeline for a decision, Like it's one where he makes the decision on his own timeline on whatever it is that he wants, and you have Russ who's actually interested and wanted to go back. So like I don't know, but I think the question is just going to be if Rodgers does sign with Pittsburgh, which it seems again like it's Rodgers and Wilson. If Rodgers signs with Pittsburgh, I have no idea where Wilson's going to be ending up. Like his landing spots are. It is like almost like barren at that point because, like you're talking almost like just backup opportunities, and we all know Russ does not want that anymore.
He could be like the lead trainer at like Anytime Fitness. I mean, he likes to work out and make videos, and
he loves doing high knees. So
high knees. And then the Colts signed Daniel Jones. I'm assuming
great quarterback room.
Right, but like you look at it, and honestly, I think Daniel Jones is going to be the starter. I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to beat him out.
Well, yeah, $14 million for a backup. I don't think so.
Yeah.
And then
these conversations about these other teams is just making me realize it feels so good not to be in that situation.
To not have to do that again.
Yeah.
Presumably for some time, so that's. Oh.
Well, I was watching NFL Network today while I was, off the clock, and they had the carousel going, but it was like the carousel of like all the movement that they were doing, like in the off season. I am just so excited, to your point, that we don't have to have that conversation again. And specifically, I don't need the PTSD of the ESPN, quarterback carousel graphic for, the Broncos every single time. So the fact that we're able to pin that down and get that all solved, and God bless Bo Nix, I think it makes me happy.
Yeah. And then moving on to the Tennessee Titans, they signed Cody Barton, agreed to a 3-year, $21 million contract. And I will explain to you at the end of this list why that is okay with me. Raiders, they got their future franchise quarterback in Geno Smith. Woo! Congratulations. You can enjoy that. Let's see. Oh, we were talking about sorry to kind of twist off of that. But if having Geno Smith and then having, is it the 6th overall pick? You have to assume they're going quarterback, right?
You would think so, but don't rule out like an Ashton Genty pick there. They may think that they've got Geno covered for a couple years and not pick up a Shedeur Sanders and try to get more for that offense.
You know, and it's funny because Mike and I were having this conversation before we went live, and if you're asking me what they should do, is actually they should draft Shedeur Sanders. Because, I mean, if you think about the comparison of everything that people have made for Sanders, it's a Geno Smith type. So he fits the mold of what they would be looking for out of a quarterback. And to keep that engine rolling post Geno Smith, it would make all the sense in the world, to draft Sanders. And I think that obviously, for Bronco fans / of course, CU fans, that's not necessarily something that, would sit well with them. But I think that, when you look at the long-term planning, I think it would be perfect for them. But as far as the Raiders and, and everything too, it's like they're such an unpredictable team that them taking Genty at 6 would not surprise me, like at all. But, again, like as I said, they probably should take Sanders. But say they do take Genty, like you're talking about an opportunity where right away, and the first couple of years, you're talking about an offense with at least a stable enough quarterback in Geno Smith and Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty to deal with, and who knows what they'll be able to add as far as a wide receiver in the room, in free agency and or the draft.
See, and for me, and again, I'm not advocating for this for the Raiders because I don't want you to be good. But in my mind, it's you got Shedeur Sanders and you've got Jackson Dart, and they're like the same for the most part. Like trade back, get an extra draft pick, and go get Jackson Dart.
Maybe
get him in the second round.
But what I actually am asking the Raiders to do is at 6, take a punter. Dude, that's what I think you should do. Go take a punter. So to answer the Geno Smith hole, the Seattle Seahawks signed Sam Darnold. So that should be interesting. I don't think he should have left Minnesota. He had the best year he's ever had in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you leave that.
Because he tanked at the last two games. So he went from being carried around the locker room and just an incredible moment to them being some questions on whether he was clutch enough. They had a first-round top 10 quarterback pick that was coming off injury. He's going to be healthy right now. This guarantees that he's going to be the guy. And he got big bucks. He got $100 million. And quite honestly, I mean, that deal was certainly agreed to before the Geno Smith trade. The Seahawks would not have exposed themselves to not having a starter. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, listen, I like Sam. I was happy for him last year. I get why he would want to move on. I don't know who he's going to be throwing to there. So, like, for the Steelers, so we don't know who's going to be throwing to them. And now we have the Seahawks, who we don't know. They're, Jackson
Cage's
Smith.
video just posted, so he should be back in a minute. I just saw the. And then
I just blocked him. I see what
there we go.
Yeah.
Bronco Bill said you are a Raiders fan, Mundungus. Okay.
Those are the kind of lame retorts you get from a Charger fan, quite honestly.
Speaking of the Chargers, they signed a running back that we had talked about in free agency. Najee Harris agreed to a 1-year deal for $5.25 million, fully guaranteed to the Chargers. I mean, whatever.
I mean, it's an interesting fit. I mean, I think what was just fascinating was they probably signed him to a deal that we probably would have signed him to if we were interested in Harris, which is just a simple 1-year deal. But I think it's a very interesting one because it's almost like a prove it year for him, with Jim Harbaugh, that if he's able to work it out, you're probably talking about a running back that will be with him. And I think that if there's one thing we know about, the Harbaughs, it's that they are very interested in kind of the same approach that the Broncos are with Sean Payton, which is a running back by committee. So it's going to be one where they're not done. Like they're probably going to be doing what the Broncos are, which is going into the draft and searching for a running back and pairing him with Najee. So I think it's going to be a very interesting fit for him, and I think that from the passing game side of things, it's just another little wrinkle that he will be able to be added, for Herbert and everything. So yeah, it's just a very one year rental, if you will, for the Chargers. We'll see if it works out.
Oh, thanks for gracing us with your presence, Gage. All right, so going back to the horrible GMs that we talked about with Jerry Jones. Continuing the trend that they've had since 2015 of not signing any free agent for more than $6 million average per year. The Cowboys actually made a signing in free agency this year with Javonte Williams. They get him for 1 year, $3 million.
Good for Javonte.
Good.
Glad he's got the opportunity elsewhere where he's probably going to get playing time because this Cowboys backfield, if they don't get Rico Dowdle back, is pretty questionable. So he'll probably be the third down back moving forward. Good to see you, Paul. But he'll probably be the third down back moving forward for them. Feel bad for Javonte that things didn't work out here in Denver. The injury sucked, but happy that he's got another opportunity somewhere. And like Paul says, Cowboy's going to Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had to laugh, and not to name names, Jordan Schultz, but I think that I had to laugh because he mentioned when the Cowboys signed Javonte that he said that they're hoping that he could be able to accomplish some of the same things that Rico Dowdle does, and I'm like, no, they are completely different running backs. Like Dowdle's a far more dynamic receiving threat. Javonte's in the Samaj P. Ryan part of his career. I mean, a really good blocker and a decent receiver, but I mean, nothing that's like explosive like Dowdle. I'm excited for him though. As you said, Gage, like it's just unfortunate. I mean, if you could just put me back in a DeLorean, to his first year as a member of the Broncos and the year that he had, and then just jubilation we had for every single run, the Baltimore Ravens run, this is probably what caused him to sign him, the Dallas game, at AT&T Stadium, where he just looked like a man possessed in that game. I mean, he just was on the verge of stardom, as a running back, and unfortunately, due to that injury, he just was not the same running back ever since.
Yep.
I think it was coming back too soon. We lauded him for this miraculous recovery, but at the same time, it didn't do him any favors in his career or for his success. I'm excited for him to have another opportunity. To be honest with you, it was a devastating injury. He's one more year removed from it, and we'll see what happens. He is going to have opportunity down there, and hopefully he continues the success he had at AT&T Stadium that Cam referenced, and that was a big game for Quinn Miners as well. Put him on the national map to some degree. So good luck to Javonte.
Yep.
So going over to the New York Giants, we kind of mentioned it earlier. Darius Slayton re-signing with the Giants for 3 years. $36 million, and we bring that up because we talked about Darius Slayton. Mario was very interested in Darius Slayton.
Yes.
Obviously, he's staying in New York, and again, Joe Shane decided to offer him more money than Saquon Barkley. So take that for what you will.
The one thing I will say about Slayton, he actually took less to stay with the Giants. That's the thing that I'm like, for my sake, like I thought he took less because I thought he was going to be getting 15 or more on the market. Almost even borderline $20 million of money. Like I thought he was going to be like the Christian Kirk of this cycle, like in that type of sense. So the fact he took like $12 million a year to stay with the Giants for whoever their quarterback's going to end up being, I mean, is quite interesting.
They must be promising a stable quarterback situation, but I don't think I can trust really anything that they say right now based on their history.
Yeah.
All right, going to the Washington Commanders, who signed 2 players that we have talked about on the show. Deebo Samuel was acquired in a trade from the 49ers. Bobby Wagner re-signed for a 1-year deal worth up to $9.5 million. I know, right? I was excited for Bobby Wagner, but it's okay, and you'll know why here in a minute. New Orleans Saints, we talked about earlier. Juwan Johnson re-signing with the Saints. 3 years, $30 million. It seems like a lot. And it could go up to 34.5 with 21.2 guaranteed. And then Chris Godwin re-signs with the Bucks for 3 years, $66 million with $44 million guaranteed. Also signing our punter, Riley Dixon, to a 2-year, $6 million deal, which kind of sucks because now we have to get a new punter. Now, Riley Dixon wasn't like amazing, but he was a good punter.
He had a good year.
He wasn't a problem.
He had a good year. It's actually more about the end of the season than anything. I mean, he did have a good game in the playoff game with Buffalo, but the end of the year was a bit kind of a mixed bag. However, I'm just speculating here. I think I have an idea about who their next punter is going to end up being, though.
Who?
It's going to be Ryan Stonehouse from Tennessee Titans. Kliss put out a thing today saying that he's been working out with Will Lutz. And also they rescinded the restricted free agent tag the Titans did. He's also from Colorado State. I think it seems pretty in there, and he's like the only big punter left, I think, because what they say, Anger signed today. So he's really the only big punter that's available, and one that very much, is a huge need and a huge leg for Denver.
Yep. So he's definitely got the acumen for kicking at altitude, kicking up at CSU. He did have a devastating injury to his plant leg, which can cause some problems when you're trying to get power off of your kicks and stuff like that. Last year, that did kind of pop up, but also Andrew Mason put out a tweet, and I'll fully admit I was not watching a lot of Tennessee Titans special teams play last year, but allegedly their coverage unit was god-awful. So that could be another reason why Stonehouse's numbers were down last year. But if this signing were to work out, obviously nothing's official yet, but it's kind of pivoting in that direction. His breakup with the Titans won't be official until tomorrow when the new league year starts, so they can't make a move on him until tomorrow. But he's pretty much the only punter that's left. They tried to get Brian Anger today and whiffed. So, yeah, it seems like Ryan Stonehouse is coming back to the state of Colorado.
Cool.
And I know we're talking punters, but Anger's 36 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Stonehouse is 24, 25. So it's I always like going with the younger guy for something like that. And didn't he average, Gage, like over 50 yards a kick one of the seasons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 53 or something crazy like that. I mean,
and last year he was at 50 gross, but his net was all the way down at like 38, which was a career low for him.
Okay. I got a list of Broncos stuff to talk about, but Gage, do you want to talk about the video you just put out about the player that we just signed?
Sure. Trent Sherfield, Denver Broncos brought in former Minnesota Vikings wide receiver, former undrafted free agent by the Arizona Cardinals in 2018. Hasn't really done a whole lot as a receiver in the past couple of years. Last time he had over 100 yards was 2022 with the Dolphins when he had over 400 yards. But Benjamin Albright confirmed that this is more of a special teams move than an offensive move. So I talked about in my video how I was kind of mad that this was going to be it, but it sounds like this is just more maybe replacing Traymon Smith than anything else.
It's like an A.T. Perry type thing?
More so, you need somebody who can be a gun or somebody who's got long speed that can run down and make those tackles on punt, be able to cover on kickoff. That's kind of his specialty. He's always around the ball in special teams, according to Albright. So if it's just for special teams, maybe a little expensive for my blood, but if he's as good as Tremont Smith, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and actually, I think that there's probably two people that you're probably putting on notice with this. Not notice, but I mean like one replacing, but two kind of on notice, and that is, Tremont Smith, as you alluded to. And then I will say that the one that's probably been put on notice is Little Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah.
As far as the role,
he's already been on notice.
I mean, if you're keeping it a buck, he's been on notice for the last year and a half, if not 2 years. But like he's a tremendous blocker. Reason why I say that, and he's one where he's been a reliable receiver when at least called upon on his very few opportunities, which kind of screams Little Jordan Humphrey. And so it's just one where if you're looking at two players, it's either Tremont Smith or little Jordan Humphrey. So if you're going to go a step further, and you're going to look at probably the reliable guy that probably everybody's been clamoring for, I don't necessarily think it takes you out of that, meaning another wide receiver. So because of the fact it is a special teams type of move for the Broncos, so I don't think it necessarily takes you out of guys like an Amari Cooper or a Cooper Kupp or someone along those lines.
Also, I think it's important to point out with Zach Wilson going to the Dolphins and us likely not carrying a third quarterback on the 53, we do have a little bit more flexibility in that wide receiver room to have an extra wide receiver on there, even if they're completely going to be dedicated to special teams. So
it's a really
I'm a lot more comfortable with the move. I mean,
yeah,
I wasn't familiar with him at all, and I look up and I'm like, $8 million for 2 years for a guy that has 86 catches or 85 catches in his entire career as an undrafted free agent. But as I appreciate you educating me a little bit on him, Gage, and what his role is expected to be, because I think that could be one of those solid moves that that makes sense once the season starts and he starts recovering kicks at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's dig into the Broncos stuff. We'll start with the re-signings. Jarrett Stidham re-signed to a 2-year, $12 million deal. Matt Parrott re-signed to a 2-year, $7 million deal. DJ Jones re-signed to a 3-year deal. And Mitchell Jabroni signed to a 3-year contract. I had to. It's right there. And then the big ones. Safety, Talanoa Hufanga agreed to a 3-year deal worth up to $45 million with $20 million guaranteed at signing. And then linebacker Dre Greenlaw agrees to a 3-year deal worth $35 million. And that is why I was okay with Cody Barton leaving, because Dre Greenlaw.
Yep. Such a good move, man. The fact that they were able to get him. I mean, obviously there's the concern about him coming off of the Achilles injury, but when he's healthy, he's one of the best and most consistent linebackers in the entire league. I'm really pumped to see how much he's going to bring to this defense just in terms of juice, because that's what this team needs. They need juice, and they need kind of structural integrity on the spine of their defense, from defensive line to the linebackers to the safeties. And I definitely think both of these moves bring that. And it's bringing back some of that San Francisco 49ers pipeline. We had DJ Jones already here, ex-San Francisco 49er, and we reunite him with two of his former teammates from 2021 in Hufanga and Greenlaw. I think that's great for continuity's sake. But overall, man, I could not be happier with what Greenlaw in particular brings to this defense. And we'll give our thoughts about Hufanga in just a second. But Greenlaw, man, great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Greenlaw, you touched on it, but he is the player that if you. And I know Alex Singleton was a captain, but he is Greenlaw is a player at linebacker that is going to be keeping every single player at any level accountable for everything. He is a true captain and true leader in any sense of the word. I mean, like, then there's an argument to be made that if he does not sustain his Achilles injury in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs, they might actually win that game, and I think it's legitimate. So I think that, you know, when you bring him in the room, a player that is he plays with his hair on fire. You're talking about one of the guys that is a elite coverage ability at linebacker, a player that can also be a very, very good, run defender. I mean, we're talking about a player that is, of any of the linebackers that were in this free agency, that probably had the highest ceiling next to Zach Bond. This was probably that linebacker. And the fact that they to, get him the deal that they did is a really, really good contract for them. So I'm hoping it can work out, because his play style. I mean, like, I tweeted a really long video that was like the mic'd up video from the NFC Championship game before they went to the Super Bowl, and I watched it numerous times, and the two players that came to mind when I just was watching that video was bringing back memories of Al Wilson and DJ Williams. Like, that kind of swagger that this Broncos team has had at linebacker is basically back with the addition of Greenlaw.
Yep. And they needed somebody who could be a consistent coverage linebacker for them, and the hope is that Greenlaw is going to provide that.
So that lends to the question, who's he going to be paired with?
Singleton, it seems. The Broncos have pretty much made it clear that he's coming back.
Yeah.
Right. But then why make the move for Sanders to inside linebacker?
Third linebacker. Yeah, rotational guy. And yeah, they're hoping that he'll carve himself a role on special teams as well. But he did show a little bit of promise in the couple of plays that he got last season. But outside of that, he's such an unknown commodity that I don't think they can depend on him to be a starter right away. They need some other bodies in there in order to make sure that they're not screwed heading into the season.
And we'll talk about the other position here, but the two prime positions that were just so deep in free agency was linebacker and safety. The Broncos had to come away with, two players from that group. And so the fact that they were able to really hit on linebacker, it was really important. And I will say, to further with Singleton, I'm still curious. This is going to be a huge year for him, but it's also one that I don't necessarily think this is going to be ruling out the Broncos of drafting a linebacker. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't think it's going to be like, I'll just for kicks and giggles, like, throw this name out there. But if they draft Jeffrey Bossa from Oregon, like, I would not be the least bit surprised if they draft a player like that. You pair Bossa and Greenlaw together, you're talking about a long-term contingency plan, even with Sanders in the mix. So and if that's the case, and Bossa shines, or even Drew Sanders specifically, if Drew Sanders shines in training camp, and he is playing lights out, like, there's a possibility where Alex Singleton is a training camp cut candidate. It's going to hurt and sting, but like, this is his last year, and coming off those injuries is a tough deal. Yep.
For sure. I'm so glad you mentioned Jeffrey Bossa, dude. I love him. He plays with his hair on fire. He's got great speed at the linebacker position, a great coverage guy. Dude, give me Jeffrey Bossa right now.
Safety converted linebacker, it's a theme in the NFL right now.
Yep.
So where would you expect him to be drafted?
Bossa?
Yeah.
He ranges between probably high end is second round. But he probably goes between second to early fourth round.
Cool. You might have to trade up to get him, but could be worth it.
Yeah.
So we talked Greenlaw. We also have a safety that they brought in, Uafunga. What do we think?
Oh man, you're talking about a player that Greenlaw. It'll be a battle. I'll just say this: it'll be a battle between who's the fan favorite between Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. Hufanga was always a player that I had circled for the Denver Broncos to be interested in. I think everybody focused so much, in terms of the top three of Cam Bynum and and Javon Holland, who, by the way, did not get the deal that everybody thought he would, signing with the Giants. Everybody thought he was going to get a $20 million a year deal. He did not get that. And then Trayvon Moehrig. Moehrig obviously going elsewhere, from the Raiders. But everybody kind of forgot about Talanoa Hufanga. And the negatives here between Greenlaw and Hufanga is a big one, because you can't ignore it. Is the injuries. But you turn the tape on for Hufanga. You sometimes want to shy away from saying comparisons like this, but you turn the tape on, and there is probably not a safety that we have seen who plays like Troy Polamalu in a long time. Hufanga plays like Troy Polamalu on a lot of plays. He is versatile. He has, in his really good years of 2022, where he was a first-team All-Pro, and 2023, he played all over the field. So if you're talking about it from the Broncos side of things, this is ideally what they would have wanted with Caden Stearns when he was a Denver Bronco. The ability to be versatile with all three wide receivers, with Hufanga, where you can play him on the D-line, you can play him in the slot, you can play him in the box, you can play him high, you can do whatever you want with him. He is the true chess piece of that safety room. And Brandon Jones can just kind of do whatever. He can do whatever, man. Like, he can just absolutely do whatever. So, and I think that everybody says that was Vance Joseph who was pounding the table for him. I say no. I say this was a Jim Leonard move. Like, this is a Jim Leonard move where he was pounding the table for Hufanga. You go back and look what Wisconsin has been able to do on defense. This is everything that they prided themselves on. A safety who plays with his hair on fire, instinctual, smart. I mean, it is everything that, is a Leonard staple. So I am absolutely excited and, hopeful that he can be healthy for every single game this season. But Hufanga checks every single box that the Denver Broncos have needed.
He's a thumper. He loves to lay the wood, man. He's good in coverage. You can play him deep, and the Broncos will play him deep. But he is at his best down near the line of scrimmage, lurking in the run game. He is excellent at stopping the run, which was a shortcoming from the safety position last year. PJ Locke, really good blitzer down in the box, but whiffed on a lot of tackles, man. A lot of tackles. And Talanoa Hufanga does not whiff on tackles. He takes the right angle, and he makes sure that he gets his guy on the ground. He is not going to let a running back run past him. He's not going to let a receiver run past him, but playing him down near the box where he can defend the run and where he can blitz, and you can even play him as sort of a dime backer and maybe bring in JL Skinner as well, and you can interchange him, put Skinner deep sometimes and then put Hufanga in the box, or put Hufanga deep and put Skinner in the box. Bro, that is scary what the Broncos could do there. So I am super excited for just the versatility that Hufanga brings on this defense. And just like Cam said, this is a chess piece that Jim Leonard probably was pounding the table for, and him and Vance Joseph are going to find a lot of creative ways to use him.
Speculation on C-Mac today on the Fan. Any rumblings?
I haven't heard anything.
The only rumblings I'd say would be like just people, mentioning the fact that we've been stealing a lot of 49ers lately. And
that's one of the things I was going to ask is, like, with all the signings and all the, like, Deebo Samuel gone, Reed's gone, Hufanga's gone, you got Greenwood gone, or Greenlaw's gone. What are the 49ers doing?
They got to free up money to pay Purdy. He's getting ready to get a big bag.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have people with the quarterback too.
So one guy that is not excited about our new safety has got to be PJ Locke. Is he? Yeah. I wanted to ask you: is there? There were thoughts that Algier from the running back from the Falcons could be on the trading block. Is there any market where PJ could be flipped for him? You got to think that Justin Simmons isn't going to re-sign with the Falcons, so they could use some safety help. Could that be a possible deal there?
The only thing I could think of is, One, I would imagine Locke would be talking with Simmons. What was the fit like in Atlanta? And I would venture to guess that he probably wouldn't get a raising endorsement, with specifically how things probably went down. And also, I think for Algier, he's a really out of the box player. And I mean, it wasn't really a player I really had circled or even put an idea on until just like I was just because I just saw a tweet like from I don't know like 3 weeks ago, and it was just one where I just was like thinking of an out of the box candidate. And it was like, oh, just throw Algier in there. I think the one thing that I just would be curious of is he's somewhat of an estimate type. That's kind of like what it kind of gives me a bit pause, but he's a versatile guy. He's a really good pass blocker. He's kind of stashed away. He's only 24 years old though. He's only 24 years old. He's a really young running back. So it's one where he's just, I feel like that's one where you would want to make if you don't think about investing in the running back class this year. If you're going to be getting a running back that's like 24 years old, or you're going out and getting a Jonathan Taylor, obviously, or you're going out and getting a Breece Hall, those are the types of, moves where you're like, oh, that's probably going to be taking you away from it. But, I just think that, it's a fascinating one because he is only like 24 years old.
Yeah. I think for PJ, his most likely outcome is he's going to get cut. The Broncos can save $4 million by moving on. That's a couple of players they could add. They like JL Skinner. They have Delarian Turner-Yell on the roster as well. So it's not like they don't have depth there. This is a loss that I think they could afford to absorb. And I do think that that's ultimately the direction things are going to go. I don't see a trade market for him.
Yeah. Hopefully sooner than later and give him a chance to get into the second wave of free agency and not be scrambling around to find a spot.
The only thing I think that I agree with you, Gage, in far as being a training camp cut candidate or just even a cut candidate. I think that I'm reminded a little bit, and well, for one, it's one of the reasons why he is a cut candidate and obviously the performance. But you look at his deal that he signed last year, right? It was a 2-year, $7 million contract. That's not a bad deal for someone who's now going to probably be safety 3 on this team, right? But it's also not a bad deal to move off of, So if they kind of do what we all envisioned or were hoping before free agency began, which was, okay, they're going to be cutting off of, Locke and maybe Singleton around training camp, you're going to be freeing up close to, $10 million in cap space. So like just hypothetically, if they end up with that $10 million in space, what would they be using that for? That would be kind of the curious part. And so, and if we are going to be looking for extensions here in the near future for the Broncos, would you want to move on from PJ Locke and Alex Singleton to save you some money so that you could be able to pay guys like a John Franklin Myers, a Zach Allen, and of course, a Nick Benito here? Like that is certainly something that I would kind of entertain here a little bit, specifically from the, further on down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll take some questions from chat. First one from Jeff Bryan. Are the Garrett Wilson rumors dead? No more. I'm assuming Garrett Wilson's not getting traded.
I think 2 words actually 4 words put that to bed, and that was Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields. Bringing Justin Fields in, who he played with at Ohio State. Got to put that one to bed.
Yep. Drew Sanders is going to be playing inside linebacker. Probably as rotational. We'll find out. Don't know. But he also, David asked earlier if there was the possibility of making a trade for a tight end. And I know, Cam, you and I think, Gage too, we're talking about this before the show started. Is there a possibility that the Denver Broncos make a trade for, say, a Mark Andrews or someone like that?
There's always a possibility. Always a possibility.
You know the name. Gage is jumping out of his skin on which tight end he wants.
Oh, yeah. I went off on that video, man. Give me Dallas Goedert. If the Eagles are willing to part with him for that cheap, that's kind of a no-brainer. I think that they could give Philadelphia even more than what they're asking, quite frankly, and I'd be perfectly okay with it. Dallas Goedert could easily step in and be your tight end one, and he could give you a lot of positional versatility, but he's an actual functioning inline tight end who can block, who can catch, who can do everything. He had a phenomenal breakout performance in the playoffs. He was great, reliable target, and I just think that it makes so much sense. I don't understand why Philly's so keen on moving on from him. I'd keep him there for life, quite frankly. But nope, it seems that they're willing to part ways with him, and per Josina Anderson, they're willing to do like a future 4th-round pick. I'd give up a 4th this year and take on Goddard's entire deal. This is not the time to be cheap, folks. The Broncos are trying to win a Super Bowl this year or next year, and they need to be aggressive. This is the time where you need to take some of these swings, and sometimes you'll hit a home run, sometimes you'll break the bat, but this is the time where you need to swing the fences.
Yeah.
You remind me of like a tight end that you would have seen on the Steelers during like Roethlisberger,
Yeah.
regime that. The
Heath Millers,
where they were so reliable, but just as you described, one of a traditional tight end right off of the line. I think that would be an amazing trade, and that's who could you get better in the 4th round than that?
Yeah,
and we have the money. It's crazy.
And I think that's why this is a fascinating one. Because regarding the tight end position, and this is one where one more time again, no one knows what Sean Payton wants, than Sean Payton. And everybody and their mother, ourselves, were saying, Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson ends up going back to the Saints. Now, was I kind of expecting the Broncos to show some interest? Sure, but not at the money that he probably signed with New Orleans. And so the fact that he signed probably was to the fact of like, okay, we're just going to go out and, go for Evan Ingram, which I think gave a lot of, people the idea that, well, one, they should go after Evan Ingram, but like, will they? And they did. And they did go after Evan Ingram, and he's still very much in the cards. He's going to be visiting, the Chargers here. So it might end up being a bit of an AFC West battle, but like, that's the point of like this free agency in terms of the tight end market. Like it was all led by Ingram. After that is where I would go into that trade market and go attack guys like a Mark Andrews, a David Njoku, or even a Dallas Goedert. Be aggressive. Like, and it really isn't even just the tight end room. Like to get everything that Gage was mentioning, like this is their window. Like this is the beginning of their window. So the fact is that I wouldn't just stop there. Like, go and be aggressive for, Mark Andrews, which I saw in the comments about like, not seeing the Ravens part away with Mark Andrews. Like the reason why they will part ways with Andrews is because of, Isaiah Likely. Likely is outperforming him. And it's kind of made him expendable. I mean, like, I think he's a reliable target for Lamar, but like he's one where, you can easily move on from him and get production elsewhere, on your roster. So they could go any direction. I'll be happy. You give me Dallas Goedert, I'm smiling ear to ear. You give me, David Njoku, I'm smiling way ear to ear. You give me, a Mark Andrews, I'm still smiling ear to ear. So it's just they have a lot of ways that they can go. Heck, they could even just go out and into the draft and do what we've been recommending with the running back room, and that is just completely overhaul the tight end room with players of a blocking tight end or even, an athletic tight end. They could even go that route, and I wouldn't even be the least bit upset. So, and then if they were that aggressive to go out and get a Mark Andrews or even an Evan Ingram, right? Like, because Evan Ingram is still in the cards, still be aggressive. Go out and get your wide receiver. It certainly seems like Cooper Kupp is going to be released. And I still very much of the belief that the Broncos are going to be a team that will be interested in him. And it seems like the deal or contract is going to be pretty low. So go out even more and go out and get Cooper Kupp. Bring him in. Be that aggressive. Like they have to be able to put their foot down and be like, this is Bo Nix's team. Let's build around him.
Yep.
So if the Broncos get Cooper Kupp, Cam, describe their wide receiver room next year. Name it.
Like in terms of the players on the roster.
Yep.
So with Cooper Kupp on the team, you're probably talking about, well, and we mentioned it before. You mentioned it with the ability now that they don't have 3 quarterbacks on the roster, so it'll give them that flexibility. So you're probably talking about, maybe 6, maybe 7 wide receivers, on the team. So I mean, like you have.
Wait, is that real? That can't be
No,
real.
it's not real.
Say, there's no way. There's no way.
Almost got you there, Mike. Almost got you.
Right?
There.
I was like, wait, would he mess with me? Yeah.
That's some Taysom Hill type shit right there.
Like, no.
Obviously, you'd have Cortland Sutton, who they're probably going to end up signing a contract extension with, either close to the draft or near training camp. So you have Cortland Sutton. You'll have Marvin Mims. You'll have Troy Franklin. You'll have Devon Vele. And then you'll have Cooper Kupp. And then you'll probably end up having Trent Sherfield, right? So that's probably going to be between your 6 and 7 wide receivers. And so I think that, for
you got to draft one too.
They might not have to, actually. And I think that, that's the thing is, you add Cooper Kupp or Evan Ingram, I should say, and Evan Ingram, you might not need to, bring in a wide receiver, because specifically if they want to develop guys like a Troy Franklin or even a Vele specifically, they might not even add anyone at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. If you've got the opportunity to add Tez Johnson,
yes.
sayonara Troy Franklin, you're going to the practice squad, buddy, because I'm sorry, man. They've invested time in Troy Franklin. I can appreciate that. But if you can get an immediate upgrade, then you do it. I can appreciate the whole relationship between Bo Nix and Troy Franklin at Oregon, but if you can bring in Bo Nix's actual adopted brother, who is more of an NFL talent, in my opinion, than Troy Franklin is, you do it. So,
and I'm not opposed to that. I just think that I would have a hard time seeing them specifically. Now you add Sherfield, right? Mm-hmm. But you add Sherfield and you hypothetically bring in Cooper Kupp in with the room that they have, plus the rumors of them wanting to develop that room. I'd have a hard time with them, bringing in another wide receiver. But Tez Johnson's the exception, because it's just, so it's one where it's like that one would be hard to ignore. But any other wide receiver, though, it would feel like they might not add anyone else, but Tez Johnson, they might.
Tez has the speed that the Broncos just don't have on their roster right now. Tez can fly.
Yeah. And that, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about is what's left for the Broncos. Like we have these signings in free agency, but we still have holes at running back. We haven't seen anything wide receiver wise. We haven't seen anything tight end wise. They haven't added anything defensive line wise. And to be honest, I think, and Glenn and I talked about it earlier, I think that the Broncos are higher on the wide receiver room than the fans are. I don't know if they make any moves at wide receiver, maybe in the draft, but I mean, they might. I mean, you look at the draft, right, and look at where things are falling. You have good defensive tackles available at the back end of the first round, where we're at 20. You've got good tight ends available, mainly Colson Loveland, but you also have running backs available. Genty might fall. You have Omarion Hampton. You've got Caleb Johnson. I mean, there are options for them in the draft. And I just, like, as much as I want Amari Cooper or a Cooper Kupp or a Rico Dowdle or Nick Chubb, or like to add these guys, I don't know if they're going to.
Well, and that's the thing about Sean, right? We said, like, don't watch what they say, watch what they do, right? Like, just to the Juwan Johnson thing, like, all the talk, like, of Juwan Johnson, making us believe that Juwan Johnson's the guy, believing the whole Saints ties again, and then he's not even a Denver Bronco, right? So just watch what they do, don't watch what they say, and so the fact that they brought in a wide receiver and then maybe even a tight end, like, just if they bring in, say, like 2 more wide receivers in, well, then he lied to us. He actually doesn't feel as comfortable, in the room about the wide receiver room. But he might be right, like in terms of believing in the room, which, to be fair, I don't hate at all. Like having the opportunity to develop guys like a Devon Vele and specifically Troy Franklin, where he's a wide receiver that, did catch a lot of heat and he didn't play great. But if you're looking at it from the standpoint of probably the one area where he needs to work on is just catching the football. He was able to separate. He was able to get open. He was able to do a lot of the other things that a lot of rookie wide receivers can't necessarily do at this point. So if he's able to catch the ball more consistently, you're talking about far more targets, far more opportunities for a guy like that. So I'm all for developing that room.
And tracking the ball. That was the real problem, was he couldn't track the ball for crap.
Right. But I mean, like you look at the beginning of the season, right? Like Troy Franklin didn't play at all. And then he got in mid-season. He played okay, but there were definitely some issues. But then at the end of the season, like we saw him in like the last 5-6 games, we saw him in every game, and he did get better. There was improvement there. So I don't want to give up on him yet. But at the same time, if there is a better option, you would hope that they would go for that option. Now, do I know if Tez Johnson is an immediate upgrade? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, we would hope so. Not that we're going to get him anyways. I don't know. There's a lot of options out there. But you would have to think that right now the immediate need would be tight end. Because running back, yes, has holes, but we still don't know what we have with Estime. So
I think that's why there's also the argument. One, I'd be against it. Just throwing that there. But like, there's an argument to be made. As much as we talk about like the belief of the wide receiver room, there's an argument to be made that like they'll do the exact same thing with this running back room. So like it's one where, and I kind of come back to it. It's a completely different position, but like, they've not taken a tackle since Garrett Bowles, and the one class, which was like 2 years ago, they could have taken a tackle and they chose not to, they chose not to, and, decided to develop Alex Palfcheski, right. And he became kind of a reliable guy that we relied on, in this last season, as far as being a replacement for McGlinchey. So, I mean, it certainly seems like, Sean knows what he's talking about, right? Like knows what he's talking about. And so I think that, it's one where there's certainly a possibility where they might actually believe in this running back room, despite the fact that he had Estime inactive against the Buffalo Bills, or the fact that, he activated Bidet and decided not to play him. So, I mean, yeah.
So aggravating.
I think the ship has sailed with Audric Estime.
It makes you... Yeah.
Them not having him active for that playoff game, training camp was rough. Very, very rough. And apparently the theme of putting the ball on the carpet wasn't just a training camp problem. That continued in like in-season practice. So, I don't know, man. I don't think that Audric Estime has the trust of this staff right now. And they are trying to completely overhaul that room outside of Jaleel McLaughlin, basically. They like Jaleel, but that's about it. Maybe Blake Watson, he'll get the opportunity to compete, but I wouldn't be surprised if Estime is a training camp cut.
Yeah. Again, everything's on the table with Sean Payton. Like, everything is on the table.
Yeah. Jeff Bryan brought up...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say he brought up Jonathan Franklin Myers, been pretty loud on Twitter. Is he disgruntled? I figured we would give him a raise already. Now, I'm going to be pretty blunt. Like, you're still under contract, and we have to sign Benito. So, wait your turn, okay?
We gave him a raise. We gave him a new deal when we got him in the trade. This can't be an annual thing where you're getting, an upgrade because you see other guys are getting paid. That's one that I don't have a lot of sympathy for, because he did get a fresh deal before starting last season.
I want to say it was a cut, though. I think he took less money to come here. So I think maybe there was a gentleman's agreement at the beginning of last year that, hey, we will do you right. But it's kind of been the Broncos' policy that they don't start renegotiations like this on players who are already under contract until after they're done with free agency in the draft. So maybe May, June, that's when we can take a look at it. But kind of like what you said, Mike, JFM isn't towards the top of the priority list to get his deal done right away. You got to get Benito done first, and you got to get Zach Allen done first. Then you can get JFM done. And I'm confident they will get something done with him because they know how valuable he is to that defensive line. But you need to be able to get some of your other guys taken care of. And the Broncos usually do it after the draft. So that's when I anticipate some extensions coming down.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. Sorry, Cam. Like, I don't want to lose him. I don't want us to move on from him. I want him on the team. But you got to wait your turn, man. Like, I understand everybody's getting paid right now, but they're getting paid because they're free agents or because they're all pros. And I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wait. Like, Benito and Allen are first. Then you can get re-signed.
Even Sutton. Like, even Sutton's a bit higher than you, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, I will say this. I understand where it's coming from. I understand where JFM is coming from. Coming from the New York Jets, where they really didn't necessarily treat you the best.
What are you talking about?
And giving him the contract necessarily that he deserved, right? I think that he's wanting that opportunity where he can be compensated with what he feels is best. So I can understand where he's coming from. And the whole reason of the restructure was for him to stay loyally to the Broncos. And so I agree. I think something gets done. It's just one where you got to wait your turn, to what you guys are saying. Like, you got to wait your turn. But I can understand exactly what he is feeling because he wants commitment. He wants, he wants necessarily to be committed to. He wants to be loved, as we all do. So I just think that, when you look at it from that,
we love you, Cam.
I would love to see him sign for like $10 million a year, but.
Well, and that's the other thing I was going to bring up. Like, I understand wanting to get paid, but at the same time, the cap keeps going up every single year. The value of your position keeps going up every single year. Just hold on, wait a minute, and your value is going to go up.
And we've got the Walmart money, dude. We've got the money to pay you. Give them a Walmart. We've got the money to pay you, dude. We will get it done. Just wait your turn.
And we don't have to pay Russ next year.
Yes.
So we want you here. They're gonna pay you a buttload of money. Just wait.
And also the timing of it, and I love him as a player, but the timing of it kind of rubs me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, we are upgrading this defense. We got DJ re-signing, Greenlaw. Now we have, toughness and probably one of the best defensive backfields now in the entire league. And that's, instead of like celebrating the changes that this defensive unit is even going to be better next year, you're raining on, Joey's parade.
It was a nice tweet too.
Yeah.
Tweet was about George Payton taking care of the players, and then that's who commented on it.
Like, really?
I will say though, like people making, like the certain accusations that you're like the Broncos don't pay players. If you're one of those people that have been out there on, social media still feeling like the Broncos don't pay their players, that is such a baseless, out of touch comment. They have paid Pat Surtain in this last offseason. They have paid Jonathan Cooper. They paid Garrett Bowles. One person does not mean they are not paying players. I don't know how I even to be clear enough to say it. One person does not mean that they have not been paying their players or that they have Walmart money and they're choosing not to pay it. Like, it is just like dumbfounding to me that there are people out there that are making accusations that are just way out of touch like that.
Let's go back to John Elway when every renegotiation was like pulling teeth, man.
Those fans are the ones that still think John Elway is running the team.
Or Joe Ellis.
I mean, it was, it was easier to get, more likely you were going to get struck by lightning than to get a second contract with the Broncos. When Elway was in charge. Those days are over.
Yeah. Now, if we were to go, we're going to leave tight end alone because there's not a whole lot of. We already talked about tight end. But if we're going to go running back in free agency, who would you want at this point? Because running back hasn't really been touched.
Let me look and see who's left.
I'm there right now. Miles Sanders, Raheem Mostert, Gus Edwards, Jeff Wilson, Nick Chubb, Madison, J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle, Kareem Hunt, Cam Akers.
I'm interested in Dowdle for sure.
Other than like Dowdle, Nick Chubb are the only ones that even make any sense.
Yeah, Nick Chubb and maybe a flyer on maybe Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins.
Up front for a short money contract. I mean, he could. What if he can, be healthy and just be a fraction of what he had been in Cleveland? That could be another steal. I mean, guys we're bringing in that have had some background or some injury history, I should say. If they can remain healthy, I mean, these are absolute steals.
It's actually one of the reasons why. Yeah, to your point, Glenn, it's one of the reasons why like J.K. Dobbins and Chubb would be on that list. As far as like if you're looking at like the timeline of what they've been able to do with players that are, coming off of injury or stuff like that. And Dobbins necessarily for the first year wasn't coming off of injury. He had a great year with the Chargers. He had a great year with the Chargers. So I feel like Dobbins or Chubb. I mean, and I will say Dowdle would be a fun one. But I think if you're going to be a bit honest here, the running back free agency market is, yeah. So if they wanted to go out and sign Nick Chubb, for example, you do it after the draft. He's a player that you would be able to like sign like after the draft. So so you get like the draft taken care of, and then JK might be one of those types of players too. In terms of like a player that might sign actually after the draft as well. So yeah, I just think that, it's one where the Broncos, at least on the initial side, it certainly seems like they would rather draft one than sign one.
While I agree, I do think that that's just not good process to try to go into a draft with a desperate need where you need a starter. You need to at least bring in a mid-tier starting level free agent, even if you do plan to draft a running back, just so that way you don't go into the draft desperate and you get jumped by another team because they know that you need a running back. It's just kind of an insurance policy, but it's also kind of playing poker a little bit here. You want to make sure that you're not completely showing your hand when you enter the draft.
Yeah, and I almost feel like if you go into the draft needing a running back, you're going to have to trade up higher up into the second to get one of those ones that would be an automatic starter the first day. I mean, like there's a lot of good running backs, but if you're going to go with like guaranteed starter, like taking Omarion Hampton, he might go in the first, but if he's in the second, you're going to have to trade up to go get him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Elephant in the room, Vaughn on the cheap.
No.
Yes, I would do it.
Oh.
And let me tell you why I would do it, because there's some danger he might go to Kansas City. And I'm sorry, I like Dondre Tillman as a fourth edge rusher, but if I have to give up on developing Dondre Tillman to keep Von Miller from going to Kansas City and bring him home, that's what I'm doing. I am not letting a future Hall of Famer that was at one point the face of this franchise go to our hated division rival. So no way in hell am I going to just sit around and go, okay, we got a good fourth edge rusher, Dondre Tillman, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, Dondre. You're out. You're out, dude, because I'm not letting that happen. If Vaughn wants to go to somewhere in the NFC, then, yeah, he can go. But if he goes to one of our rivals, then I think the Broncos need to come in and say, hey, Vaughn, come home. Don't do that.
Yeah. All right.
I'm gonna
Anything else
pass.
that we go ahead?
Oh, no, I think one thing Vaughn has done a masterful job is, and he was a great player for this team. Super Bowl 50 is because of Von Miller. No more Cam Newton is because of Von Miller. But where he's done a fantastic job is with the we and the us and the referencing, speaking as though he's still with the Broncos when he's two teams removed. And so there's this feeling with the fans that, this guy is one of us. We got to bring him back. Gage has probably the best explanation as to why to do it. But 36 years old, even going somewhere else, I don't see him making that impact. And I'd rather see where we go with the guys that we have and perhaps another edge that may come in the draft. I think that ship has sailed. Let's have him retire a Bronco, put him in the Ring of Fame as early as he possibly can get there, and let's call it a career.
I'm with you, Glenn. I mean, if what Gage says is true about him being a Chief, I think that would at least ignite things for him to come to Denver. I have a hard time with him signing with Kansas City. I just I can't picture it. I think if there was a team out there now that he's a free agent again, if there's a team that he probably would want to sign for, it would be the Dallas Cowboys. And given the fact that they're throwing out 1 year, $7 million deals constantly since 2015, it rather seems to fit the Vaughn timeline of them kind of signing him to, that kind of deal, if you will. So I would love to see him play for Dallas, for at least a part of his career, but the one thing I will say from a standpoint of, for him maybe being a Bronco is if you look at the timeline of where things are with the Broncos, they are beginning and starting a playoff Super Bowl window. So he kind of fits that. He fits that in terms of the Broncos being somewhat aggressive. The problem is he doesn't fit right now. Like he doesn't fit. They need to develop some of their guys. And then maybe in 2 years, that's when we can start talking about some of that. Because, I don't want to take snaps away from a Dondre Tillman or even maybe even another player that they have, upcoming necessarily. I will say, though, I think that it's one of the reasons why that particular position, in terms of a pass rusher, wasn't necessarily on my board, as far as a need. It's never been a need going into this season because of that. So when Harold Landry was a free agent, there's no need for it. He averages 9 sacks a season. You already have it for Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito. He's not a need. It's more about an absolute want at that point. And for Vaughn, he's going to be a Bronco. He's going to be a Bronco. Justin Simmons, he's going to end up being, coming back to Denver. They're both of them are going to be coming back to Denver at some point. It's just a matter of, when, not a matter of if.
And another thing I want to say about Vaughn just before we dismiss the topic is he can still play at a high level. He did only play, I believe it was 300 and some odd snaps last year. I wrote it down somewhere. It was 332 total snaps, mostly on third down, but he had 40 total pressures and 6 sacks. That's a high pressure percentage. If you're just bringing him in to rush the passer on third down, he still can do that. 30 quarterback hurries, 4 non-sack quarterback hits. If you are seriously trying to go all in for a championship, those are the kind of signings you make. You need guys who have won championships before. You need people in there that can bring that culture. And it's not just sentimental either. I think Vaughn can still play, and he can still bring something to this team. Him and Nick Benito rushing the passer on third down, and this isn't taking snaps away from Jonah Ellis either. You could still have Ellis in on early downs especially. This would leave probably Dondre Tillman out, but at the end of the day, man, if you're bringing back a future Hall of Famer, I'd rather do that than have Dondre Tillman as your fourth edge rusher. But I can also understand the argument of trying to leave the development be. But if you want to bring in somebody who knows what it takes to win a championship here in Denver, then you bring Vaughn home.
I mean, I think the big question is how much would he be wanting, right? Like he was making what, $20 million a year? He's not going to get that.
Yeah.
So what would he be willing to go someplace for?
He might come back to Denver for close to the vet minimum. He might. Because I think there's one team out there that he would take a hometown discount for, and that is the Denver Broncos. He might take a cheap deal to go to Dallas, but let's be honest, Vaughn wants to win a ring. I don't think he wants to go to Dallas and go 8-9 next year. He wants to compete for a Super Bowl, and he wants to end his career like Peyton Manning did, riding off into the sunset. And probably the best team out there right now that gives him that opportunity is Denver.
Well, and that's why he wouldn't want to go to the Chiefs. He doesn't want to go 8-9 next year. I called it. Just saying. All right. Anything that we didn't cover? Anything you want to talk about before we go?
Other than, Tyler Lockett will not be a Denver Bronco.
Shut your mouth.
And he will be a Las Vegas Raider. I'm pretty.
You think so?
Yes.
I hope not.
Bring the band back together,
Jack,
baby.
but I hope not.
I mean, listen, Lockett is in the stage of his career where he's probably not going to do a whole lot for you on the field, but he will provide that veteran stability in the Raiders receiving room, and they need a complete reset of the culture in that locker room right now, and he knows exactly what Pete Carroll wants to build culture-wise in that locker room. They're trying to bring as many of Pete Carroll's guys in as possible, and Tyler Lockett fits that bill.
I guess. I suppose. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. We thank everybody for joining us in the chat. It's always fun when you guys are joining us, making the conversation flow. So we appreciate it. We will continue to update. I will do my best on the network Twitter page. I'm not very good at it, but I'll do my best. If you need any updates, make sure you head over to Broncos Syndicate. He even leaves other shows to go record videos for every one of you. So make sure you go check that out. Check out all the other shows on the network. We got shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then when the Avs make the playoffs, then the neighborhood will be back for that. Make sure you check out Cam's show, Mainly Broncos, Wednesday night. Again, Gage Madrid, Broncos Syndicate. Go follow that page as well. Me and Glenn are just on this one because we're just too dang pretty to be on any other shows. So this one is the one to check out. But again, we thank you. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We'll see you all later. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down. So what? This is my lifestyle. Wait a minute. Work hard for the car, so that's why it's all tinted. Wait a minute. Had a real late night, woke up with my...
We're still live, dude.